All right, welcome back to the channel. Eddie Hearn says the fight with Andy Ruiz is going to be in Saudi Arabia. Bernard Hopkins says don't be surprised if the venue doesn't change. It does change before the fight starts. And I'm saying, man, Eddie keeps running the same scam. All right, let's talk about that in this video. All right. Eddie Hearn announces to the world that the rematch between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz is going to take place in Saudi Arabia in December. Big announcement. Must mean the fight's going to happen in Australia in December, right? Think again. First, let's come with this. I never believed anything that Eddie Hearn says off the cuff until I hear somebody else back it up and validate it, or I actually see it take place. Because I do recall there being fights announced. A 3-fight deal was announced. The location for Anthony Joshua's next 3 fights was revealed to be Wembley Stadium in April. You remember that? 4 horsemen. Wembley has 4 horsemen because they had negotiated the deal for the location of the fight for Anthony Joshua for his next several fights. And he fought 1 fight with Alexander Povetkin, and the next fight wound up being in the US and not in Wembley Stadium. What does that have in common with this? Eddie Hearn just announced a date and a venue for a fight that has not been agreed to. Nowhere in that statement that I've heard have anybody said that Andy Ruiz has agreed to fight in Saudi Arabia. Strange, huh? Strange how ESPN runs with it. Strange how I'm on this Mike Coppinger dude. Strange how you guys run it, but you don't say the whole thing. You've announced the venue as if you know that's where the fight's gonna happen. Eddie said it's gonna be in Saudi Arabia. It's going to be December 7th in a yet-to-be constructed stadium. So let's get this right. It's going to be a fight. You announce the fight date and location for a fight that has not been agreed upon, that has not been contracted for, and at a venue that has not been constructed yet. But yet, you're going to run with this. Oh, and been told by a known liar who basically said, who just did the same thing when he announced that we got, what is it, the April 3rd date? That April 3rd date is there. Anthony Joshua had a date, April 3rd in Wembley of 2019. I believe it was the 3rd, but he had a date set for his next opponent, April 3rd. I'm looking for you, Deontay. I'm looking for you, Deontay. Only problem was, Deontay says, screw you. I'm not fighting you. I'm moving on and doing something else because I don't believe you're serious. And then he winds up not fighting any opponent at Wembley at that date and winds up going to the United States to get knocked down 4 times and quit up against the ropes against Andy Ruiz. And that brings us full circle to today. Anthony, again, let me repeat what the media ran with. Eddie Hearn announced the date and a venue for a fight that he has not contracted yet. For as far as I know, and from what was said, and I saw in an article from Andy Ruiz's cousin, it's his cousin, so hey man, I'll take his word for it for the sake of this. And he said that Andy Ruiz hasn't signed an agreement to fight Anthony Joshua. They haven't signed a contract. So how in the world can you announce a venue and a date in a stadium that hasn't been constructed yet before you even have an agreement in place to fight the other fighter? Do you think you might be putting the cart before the horse? And also, Bernard Hopkins said, don't be surprised if this venue changes. And because people will wake up and say, hold on, man, we're going to Saudi Arabia for this. You know, the Saudi Arabia that still, as of the time of this video, hasn't paid Amir Khan for the fight that took place there. So you think that Al Heyman and Al Heyman and the PBC, that they're just going to go send Andy Ruiz over to the Saudi Arabia without any type of like escrow agreements in place about, okay, so you say we're going to go to Saudi Arabia. We need our money in an escrow account by this date. Have you discussed any of that? Right? No, they just come out and say, hey, we made this fight. We made this fight for this date. That's what the date is. Perhaps what Eddie Hearn is trying to do is trying to negotiate in the media like he's done many, many times. The cat's constantly negotiating in the media, constantly trying to tear down fighters' net worth in the media, where other people with the PBC has stopped playing that game with him a while ago. They stopped playing it with Deontay Wilder. After they turned down that $50 million deal from Deontay Wilder, and then but then Deontay Wilder tried to accept the $15 million for Eddie Hearn, and then the WB for the Joshua fight in the WBA, just, all of a sudden he had to fight Alexander Povetkin on the same weekend that wasn't available for a fight with Deontay Wilder. They stopped playing that back and forth media game, negotiating in the media game. And this sound has all the makings. Now, I might be wrong. Clearly, I might be wrong, but this has all the makings of a negotiation ploy on the behalf of Eddie Hearn, using the media and people's tendency to want to have to be the first person to report on something to his advantage. Here's another thing too. They keep saying about this rematch clause. And I've been saying from the beginning that just because the rematch clause is there and it says the location, that doesn't necessarily mean if Andy Ruiz refuses to fight at a specific location, that's a breach of contract, that's a material breach of contract. Because it might not necessarily, a court could say, yeah, that's in the contract, but it's not a material breach. You still get your value out of the contract. Your value of the contract was, number one, Anthony Joshua, you got the fight with Andy Ruiz. You got your money. He fought. That was what you were negotiating for in your contract with Andy Ruiz when you guys fought and he beat you by knocking you down 4 times and you quitting on the ropes. That was what you were contracting for. Now you have another clause called a rematch clause where you say, okay, if I give you that and I lose, you gotta fight me again. Okay, now that right there could be considered a non-essential or I forget the term, but basically a non-essential term. However, for you to have a specification within that you get to name exactly where the fight goes, dude, this cat might say, you might find a court that says, no, look, that is not him refusing to sign anywhere that you want to go is unreasonable. It's unreasonable. And if he says he'll fight you in New York, or you guys got to come up with something else, they might not say that that's a breach of contract if it's in the agreement at all. Regardless, look, Eddie Hearn has announced a fight for a fight that has not been agreed to. Let me repeat that. He has announced a fight, but see, he's playing words, right? He announced the venue and the date that he is going to propose to Andy Ruiz. That's what he did. He said, I got an offer from Saudi Arabia to fight on this date in Saudi Arabia. They're going to put this much amount of money into the fight. It's going to be in this stadium. And I am going to put that in an agreement with Andy Ruiz and see if Andy Ruiz accepts it. He didn't announce the fight. All he did was announce a proposal that he was going to give to Andy Ruiz. Until you hear that Andy Ruiz agreed to the fight, it doesn't mean anything. Just doesn't mean anything. And I've yet to hear Andy Ruiz say anything. And shout out to Barbershop Conversations, because he was the first guy that really made me, click and start thinking like, hold on, this is Eddie. It's Eddie Hearn. He's announcing a venue. He's announcing a date and a venue for a fight ahead of time again. This is the second time he did it. Again, he did it with the fights for the fight that he was saying he wanted to have with Deontay Wilder, where he went into the negotiation with a fight date and a venue already named, already in the public, which could do what? Try to take away the bargaining power of the other party, because now everybody in the world knows what the term is. And honestly, man, it's bad faith negotiation. It is what it is. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.